Relief printmaking is a process consisting of cutting or etching a printing surface. Ink is then applied to the surface, usually using a brayer, which is kind of like a roller, and only the raised areas get ink, while the carved in or pressed down areas don't get ink. When you press paper onto that template or that surface, then the ink gets transferred onto the paper. So in this diagram, A would be the printing plate or the printing surface, and B would be the paper. For this project, we will be using Styrofoam as our printing surface, and you'll be using a pen, a ballpoint pen, to press into the Styrofoam into the areas that you want to keep white. The rest will be printed with a black ink. To make the Styrofoam print, first you'll need a piece of Styrofoam. It's pretty thin, so you'll have to be careful with it, and you'll want to make sure you write your name on the back of it. Don't press too hard because you don't want to dent the Styrofoam. And then what you can do is flip it over, and you will tape your image that is pretty high contrast over top of the piece of Styrofoam. And we'll be working directly off of this image, so fit it the best you can. If you need to cut the excess paper off, you can as well. And I'm going to hinge it with 2 pieces of masking tape at the top. That way it doesn't slide around, but I can flip it up to see how my impression is coming for my relief print. Make sure that's really secure. Now for pressing in your print, you'll want to make sure you press down the areas that you want to keep white. And so I would start with some simple areas first, maybe save the facial features for last, because that's what's going to make the person really look like the person they are. So what you can do first is outline a little bit, and I'm just going to press down this white area for the background. And I'm using a colored pen. I'm not using a black pen because I want to be able to see what areas I'm pressing down a little bit better. And if I'm using a black pen, it might blend in with the ink of the printed picture. So I'm going to work my way around and focus on pressing down the white areas, starting with the outline first. I'm actually going to leave a black outline around the edge. What you can do next is flip up, and you can do this periodically as you're working. You can flip up your print and see how you are pressing down the Styrofoam. Those pressed down areas are going to be the areas that stay white. So once you get the basic shapes done, then you can work in some of the other areas of your artwork. I am going to start with next, I think I'll do a little bit more detail in the hat and just press down the areas that are white so I can show the texture of the hat. You don't have to be incredibly precise, but you should be looking at specifically the sections that are white and pressing those down. You can press pretty hard. If you rip the Styrofoam, it's not a big deal. It really doesn't matter if you rip the paper, as long as you're making sure you're pressing down the textures and the areas that are white. So I can show the texture of the hat by pressing down these little sections of white here. It looks like I have a lot of the hat done. Again, you can flip it up and see It doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, but you can see the texture that I'm showing in the hat being pressed down. And some of the gray areas maybe that didn't get totally translated into high contrast, you might have to just decide what would look the best and decide if it should be kept white and pressed down or if it should just be left black and left raised. You're gonna have to make those decisions, especially in areas that are a little bit hard to determine, but just make sure you press down really well in the white areas. And also, if you noticed here, I was going along the contour of how the hat curves. So I had more curved lines this way. You'll want to make sure you really show the contours of the face, and I'm going to show that next when you start pressing down those areas. Start with the areas that are pure white first, and then you can work your way beyond that. So for the contours of the nose, we know our noses go downward. So I'm going to start with just tracing around the areas that are black, so I can make sure I leave those. It's going to look a little bit creepy, but I want to make sure I preserve those areas. I'm going to worry about the inside of the eye last, but I just want to get this outlined first. So now when you start coloring in the big part of the face, most of the faces are going to be lighter in color because the shadows are what was translated into the black, the high contrast. And so I'm going to work, like I said, with the contours of the face. Now your hand's gonna get really tired, so if you need to stretch it out or bend your fingers back to take a break, that's fine, because we really wanna make sure we're pressing down really well. Looks a little bit creepy right now. That's okay though. Keep on persevering and pressing forward, because when the print comes out, you're going to be surprised at how it looks. And if you accidentally draw with pen on the styrofoam, that's okay. So I'm going to look at the nose first, and I know that noses kind of come down on a person's face. And so I'm going to move my lines downward like this, and then kind of curve by the nostril. The cheekbones curve out this way, so I'm going to start curving my lines out for the cheek. All right. I'm going to stop the video and then continue working. One thing to keep in mind is that if your paper rips too much, you might have to tape it back together because you don't want to lose pieces. But you can see that I'm starting to get my shapes pressed down for the detail of my piece. Make sure, like I said, you're working with the contour of the image and you're pressing down as much as you can. If there are areas that you are not sure about if they should be pressed down or not, leave those for last. And we'll be doing some test prints so you'll be able to see how your print looks, and you can adjust some things if you need to press things down more. Don't get worried if you think it looks really, really weird. Keep persevering, because you'll be surprised at how the print turns out. And with the hair, just make sure you color the hair in the direction that the hair grows. Same thing with the neck. If you color in the neck, which I would probably leave a little shadow under the chin, take my liberties in showing the shadow, and then color in the rest of the neck white so that it would print white, but just have a little shadow. And if I'm coloring the neck, I'm going to work with downward lines that show how the neck goes down, like that.